Welcome back. Okay, we're going to talk about the new global interoperable system. Don't believe me when I say it, but you might want to believe the high-level people that are talking about it themselves. The narrative is being carried by the right people in this sector, in all of these sectors around the world, discussing the idea of a new financial system as well as global stable coins. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to hear the remarks of a few people in this panel from the Center for Strategic International Studies tell you about a new global interoperable system, and you won't believe what you're going to hear in regards to what the Undersecretary of the U.S. Treasury actually aligns himself with. That is pretty powerful, as well as many other things. And before we get out of here, I think we have an update on the Ripple court case, and it could be quite promising. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this thing. Roll that intro.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
All right, you can follow me at Backup Bradley above at the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. Let's go ahead and do this. I promise more clips of this, and it's straight fire. You're going to want all of this. Pay very close attention. As we go through this, I'll jump in, make a few remarks, and need to highlight some things. And I'll also be showing you some clips and some PDFs as they talk about the material and the comments that they make that really align and show all of us that we're on the right trail. Let's go ahead and get started. Here we go.
Introduce our panel of experts. I hope very much that folks can stick around for this part of the conversation. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Phil, with that, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for that introduction. We now move from the global policy titans relaxing in their armchairs to the worker bees sitting on bar stools with a pint of best bitter in front of them to pick up some of the crunchier issues raised. I thought that was a fascinating discussion, Stephanie. I particularly struck by the Vice Minister's coining of a new phrase, the idiosyncratic CBDC, which I think is wonderful. And I was interested in the Undersecretary's apparent liking for the SHC, the synthetic hegemonic currency, which former Bank of England Governor Carney floated at Jackson Hole last year.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. What he's acknowledging here is that the Treasury Undersecretary for the United States of America, Brent McIntosh, is in complete alignment with Mark Carney's thoughts on how to introduce a systemic hegemonic currency. And he even cited Ripple when he made those comments. This is back in 2019. This is what Mr. Carney said. Has raised the question of whether globally coordinated systemic hegemonic currency could dampen the spillover shocks associated with the dominance of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. A systemic hegemonic currency could, for example, be a stablecoin backed by a basket of deposits at different central banks. It is possible that such a stablecoin could be valuable for cross-border payments, serving a function similar to that offered in the private sector by Ripple, a real-time gross settlement system currency exchange and remittance network whose digital currency XRP leapfrogs slow and expensive correspondent banking. He's actually showing you right here that a stablecoin backed by a basket of deposits at different central banks. We've talked about this before on this channel. This gentleman in this conference is referencing those comments from Mark Carney and the fact that the Under Treasury Secretary in the United States of America agrees and aligns with those thoughts in that process. This is what it would look like. This is a diagram, and in the middle here represents all the banks around the world, major central banks. Just have an image there to represent that. A basket of deposits held at the central banks around the world, providing a collateralized floor value, or in other words, a price set on XRP, making it the most reliable tradable asset and exchangeable asset, bridge currency in the world, creating demand for use because of that very fact, and creating deep liquidity for it to be used. And then we have all of it running on the universal XRP ledger for all the money. That's what they're talking about. And the U.S. Under Treasury Secretary agrees with that idea or approach. Let's keep going. Lots more to look at here.
So I think a lot of interesting elements there. I think there is a real question as to whether the international coordination and cooperation can keep pace with some elements of national self-determination and private sector profit pursuit.
And listen, that's a good point, because he's talking about the idea, will the coordination and cooperation continue, or will this change to change gears at some point in its growth and development to just flat out competition? And look, I think at some point that is a natural organic order and growth to any market or adoption of a new product or asset or service. So I think it starts out right now with the cooperation and coordination. And to go along and highlight that, this is the World Economic Forum Policymaker Toolkit that shows that right now, currently, the world is, as recently as this past January of 2020, has cooperation and coordination because they all believe that they're going to build a CBDC, and they released a regulatory, and it released a guidance framework with this policy toolmaker kit to design your CBDC. And these are the things to think about and consider. And what they show you here is clearly that crypto assets designed for inter and intra-bank payments and settlement. Examples are given for JPM coin and XRP. Well, there you have it. That sounds like coordination and cooperation. The World Economic Forum agrees. XRP's got use case utility, and they all see it. Now, let's go ahead and jump through this because the whole thing's incredible, but I want to skip forward right here to 46 minutes right here. Let's pick it back up.
The digital currency becomes an element of international cooperation, or indeed an area of fierce international competition. And
again, to his point, I totally get his point, but at this level, we can see that we have, from the World Economic Forum, coordination and cooperation. Doesn't mean at some point it won't graduate to competition, but this is where we currently are in this stage, I would say. So now let's jump forward very quickly, and I'm trying to move through this stuff as quickly as possible to keep it as tight running as possible. Let's pick it up right here, and let's jump into this because we've got a few minutes here to listen to Tommaso from the IMF and listen to what he says here.
To our team, and we'll try and deal with as many as possible. But I'd like to ask Tommaso to kick us off. Do you think there are some people, Tommaso, who think the global financial system is, particularly the Bretton Woods system, is on its last legs, it's about to collapse, and the threats of nationalism, technology, innovation, and various other things are leading us to a new revolution in international payments, which is going to make the world look very different from today. How does the IMF see this?
Thank you very much. Do you hear me well?
Perfectly, thank you.
Very well, very well. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here with our friends from CSIS and OMFIF. The question is evolution or revolution, I suppose. And maybe I can start by being more concrete, and then we'll work our way up to the 30,000-foot view, as you were suggesting. So we had this debate at the IMF, and with a group working under the FSB on improving cross-border payments. And in this group...
By the way, just let me really quickly show you that this is the IMF PDF that we're talking about here that cites Ripple as a new non-bank players that are entering the payment space. This is an IMF PDF that Mickey B and myself covered here back in the middle of August. And it shows here the example of RippleNet. It goes deeper through the document and highlights Ripple and RippleNet even more when talking about cross-border and payments. And it also cites throughout this document that the FSOC, the Financial Stability Oversight Council, another regulatory agency connected to the U.S. Treasury, all citing, by the way, that this stuff is viewed as currency and or money. Otherwise, the Treasury wouldn't be so damn interested in it. So we move through this, and you can see that many more times throughout this document. Again, here's important, and it talks about the idea that we've covered here heavily on this channel about retail new payment infrastructures that have not been designated as systemically important by FSOC, which I believe the Treasury and FSOC absolutely at some point after an international level decision need to come to themselves, and they need to absolutely come out and deem something like the XRP ledger and the ILP a public good, and the XRP ledger at the very least systemically important to the financial stability of the world and the U.S. Here it talks about RippleNet is designed as a wholesale payment system without being subject to payment-specific requirements other than requirements posed by banks. Again, leaning heavily into the idea that it has been money and it is money, and we just need them to say that it's money. Now, coming back to his comments to let him finish his thought here, I just wanted to show you what was going on at the IMF. So when you hear him saying we've talked about these things, just know that ripples come out of his mouth, even though he hadn't said it here, because they're talking about it in the PDFs floating around the offices there.
We came together to think about what the main frictions are in cross-border payments, what solutions are possible, and what sort of roadmap we could put together in order to offer concrete solutions and a timeline for improvements.
And a timeline for improvements. How about that? And let's look. I'm going to skip a lot of great things because Tommaso is just an amazing person to listen to for insight on these things. Let me just jump to here, and I know this might not be the exact jumping point, but let me jump in here because I want you to hear him talk about the idea of public-private relationship and a private currency becoming as big as fiat.
Adoption in countries with relatively weak currencies, so high inflation, volatile exchange rates, imperfect rule of law, credibility of institutions, so large-scale, quote-unquote, dollarization. The third scenario is one I think that is potentially most concerning, and that is the widespread use of a privately issued digital currency in its own unit of account. So that scenario plays out in the following fashion. That is, a private company introduces a new currency. It's fully backed by an existing fiat currency.
Let's now think of the Mark Carney proposed idea that the U.S. Treasury Undersecretary is aligned with, the idea of proposing something like XRP, backed by fiat, just like he just said, and then it becoming so big and so used and so popular that it ends up not needing to be backed by fiat, and then it rolls out as a currency all its own. Here, keep listening.
Usage rises very, very rapidly because of an established global network of users.
Oh, I'm sorry. Isn't that what Ripple has with RippleNet? A global network of users that instantly, just like the PDF file from Deloitte suggests, you get enough people across the globe, the largest players of the world, to commit to using something like XRP for global cross-border settlement. And then you could force a mandate of its use on everyone else. This sounds a lot like what he's suggesting as a scenario that could play out. And I want you to imagine now that all the largest banks in the world that are on RippleNet and the other customers and providers that are on RippleNet begin to synchronize and decide to collateralize in one synchronized fell swoop this network that he's talking about. And instantly you have a value that is so reliable because it's been collateralized. And as it begins being used, the constant day-to-day utility will eventually require less and less collateralization because it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy because of the perpetual flywheel motion of the constant flow of liquidity that moves through the system.
And at some point, the currency goes fiat. The backing is removed, and it's in its own unit of account. It floats, and then you have issues of misaligned incentives where users of that currency would be exposed to, quote unquote, the monetary policy stance of that private company that perhaps doesn't have their best interests in mind.
And this is where I believe, and why I believe, we saw the creation of the XRP Ledger Foundation. And now it's a non-profit, independent foundation that sits on its own because Ripple is completely decoupled from it and sees their self as a holder of XRP just as any other participant in this network and ecosystem, which is also why they said they will be buying XRP and participating in buying XRP back off the secondary markets as they now are beta testing lines of credit. This is pretty remarkable, watching Ripple really conduct itself in the manner of becoming a bank, and even much like a central bank, if you will.
That's the third scenario. The fourth scenario is a multipolar world that you were just describing. It's multiple currencies competing, and we have to take into account the possibility that that competition would involve both public currencies, so currencies issued by public, by governments essentially, and privately issued currency.
And that's a multipolar world, or a new global interoperable system. And that could look a lot like this. And I believe that may just be why we're seeing Judy Shelton back on the table for discussion, that she may be going back before the Senate for a full floor vote to bring her into the Fed and introduce the idea of a gold-backed system for this fiat, because we may be seeing very soon, not too distant future, the adoption of a bridge currency like XRP, which can allow all the countries of the world to maintain their sovereign nations and their sovereignty in their money and monetary policy, as well as be able to settle and introduce many, many more multiple currencies that are standalone, that are not fiat-backed, but privately run, and be introduced to the world, and let the world and the technology take off and develop and have this firewall between all of it. So if something goes down, the whole system doesn't go down. That particular currency goes down. And this is a way of protecting everyone else around the world. And I believe, in macro sense, catering to the nationalist approach of the world and thinkers of the world, and also to the globalist approachers and thinkers of the world as well. So that's where we are on this day. Now, before we get out of here, I said we got some news on the Ripple court case. Shout out to my man who sent this to me. I don't know if he wants his name said, so I'm going to refrain, but you know who you are, and I'm very happy that you sent it, and I'm very grateful for everything that you do send, Mr. W. I'll say that. You know who you are. Okay, so it looks like here, if you look at this document, it says here, filed November 12th, just a few days ago, 3 days ago, Judge Phyllis Hamilton, and what we see here is they have all the initial case management conferences held, the dates for this, filed by 2022, opposition due 2022, 10/21/22 for the reply, all these different dates in the year 22 and 23. And then we see check down here, it says referrals, case referred to ADR for private mediation by March 19th of next year. In just 4 short months, 4.5 months, this thing goes to private mediation, is what it looks like to me. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but you tell me, because that's a lot what that looks like right there. So we may be seeing the Ripple court case go to private mediation, and it may get resolved without having to go the distance. But if it does, all the dates are set. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like and subscribe. A new global interoperable system and a update on the Ripple lawsuit. So let's keep it together. Let's hit the like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Turn on your notification bell and subscribe button for the Digital Ledger channel. I will be doing a live stream from my other channel tonight. Go subscribe to that channel. I want to see all of you in there. Make sure you check out the links in the description box and the comment section. There's really great stuff in there. Everything from I Trust Capital to Ledger Nanos, Family Pack discounts, or even .cryptos and everything else you can imagine. I've even got some great merchandise. I think the hottest merchandise on the planet. Don't tell somebody how much crypto you hold. Show them what you love about crypto with the merchandise you own. All right, that'll do it for me. I'll catch you on the next one.